where I grew up, there was a lot of open space and wetlands and bike trails and stuff nearby. And that was really great for a young kid because I got to ride my bike around a lot and go on walks and things, and kind of there was like what felt like open space to explore and hang about in that wasn't, backyards and houses and things. And at some point, my family got a dog when I was reasonably young. And so it was my sister and my responsibility to walk the dog, and we would walk it out down these walking tracks and bike tracks and stuff out near our house. So we had a lot of open space to take the dog through. I remember we used to deliberately walk our dog, who was a small West Highland White Terrier, through the really long grass because we thought it was quite funny the way he would jump his own height to make a single step to get sort of pop up and down, up and down, up and down through the grass. I also remember on these dog walks, that was probably some of the first instances of my sister and I being allowed to kind of go out on our own and come back and manage ourselves with essentially no supervision, although we were sent to do a chore, effectively. I remember going to the 7-Eleven and I bought a cap gun, which my parents weren't pleased with because I wasn't allowed gun toys, but I bought it, so what can you do? And I was on the dog walk, so I wasn't supervised. No one was telling me I wasn't going to be allowed to. I remember going to there's various bits of play equipment kind of on the edge of these walking tracks and stuff in various different directions. I remember going to one of the bits of play equipment once and standing at the top of the play equipment structure, which seemed probably reasonably tall to myself at the time, and kind of like taking a big breath of air and sort of like taking in the scene and kind of feeling like really free in this ridiculous way, because I was just kind of somewhere that I was in control of and walking out by myself or with my sister, and we weren't required for anything anywhere. We were just sort of enjoying the outdoors. I remember that feeling really liberating, like probably the first instance I ever really had of the notion of personal freedom in a way that maybe an adult does, and really enjoying the feeling of it as much as I might have over-romanticized it in my own head. That felt quite good to me at the time. I also remember that my sister and I used to go to there was this large collection of trees, the kind that had grown all the way down to the ground with sort of hanging branches and greenery, and to the point where they'd made these kind of accidental dome-like cubby house-like things, because if you crawled between them at the base, you ended up on the inside underneath this kind of dome-like canopy, and it felt like almost deliberately designed, like a little hut. And we would go walk the dog and go sit in there, and the dog would sit down there with us, and we'd just talk. I remember we would often talk about things that I suppose were interesting to children. I remember when there was a craze for Furbies, which were those animated, talking, sort of soft toy things that chirped a lot and tried to learn words and say them back at you and other things. I remember, there was a craze, so we wanted one, obviously, and we would go on a dog walk, as we had to, and go sit under the dome tree hut thing and talk about how awesome Furbies were and how much we wanted one. I remember before we would go on these walks, at some point we had learnt Pig Latin, and we would discuss before we left what we were going to talk about when we got there. It occurs to me now as an adult that everybody knows Pig Latin. My parents undoubtedly knew exactly what we were saying before we left, which I don't really know why we were keeping secrets, especially anyway. Yeah, those dog walks and kind of walking around that open space in those wetland areas were some of the first real instances of the feeling of personal freedom that I can remember.